you?
Lady Gaga.
Gaga.
Gaga. Lady Gaga!
Lady Gaga.
Gaga.
I like some of the Gaga songs. What the f does she know about cameras?
Stefani Joanne Angelina Germanata, professionally known as Lady Gaga, is one of the most unapologetically polarizing artists ever. So naturally, I've never listened to her music, because I'm just a pretty milquetoast dude. Average intelligence, average charisma, average genetics. The only not average thing about me is my height, but even that just balances me out to be an average amount of attractive. And Gaga makes music for all the fun people, the ones that stand out. I want to stand out. I want to be one of those people. So I decided to listen to every single Lady Gaga album, and in this video, I'll be recapping, reviewing, and ranking all of them.
Applause, applause, applause. I live for the applause, applause, live for the applause, applause.
Lady Gaga was born on March 28, 1986 in New York City. Growing up, music was seemingly a pretty large part of her life, as she started playing the piano when she was only 4 years old. She began taking music more seriously in 2005, recording singles here and there and performing with her college band called the Ska Band. In 2007, she got her foot in the door as a writing intern for Sony Music Publishing, working for artists like Fergie and Britney, eventually leveraging that into a record deal with Streamline, which, in case you don't know, is an offshoot of Interscope Records. Also, apparently the name Lady Gaga came from a music producer named Rob Fusari, who referred to her over text as Radio Gaga, which is a Queen song, if you don't know. Radio Gaga, Radio Goo Goo, and it autocorrected to Lady Gaga. That's kind of a fun story. Honestly, we don't know how true that is. Who knows if anything I've said thus far is true. I'm essentially just regurgitating her wiki page. Since getting signed in 2007, Lady Gaga has released six studio albums. The Fame, Born This Way, ARTPOP, Joanne, Chromatica, and Mayhem. She's also dropped a lot of supplementary works, including 2 collaboration albums with this guy named Tony Bennett, the Joker 2 soundtrack, a separate companion album for the Joker 2 as well, and of course, Tell Me Something, Girl. Most of the albums do have deluxe editions, but it seems like a large chunk of the additional songs are just remixes. So for the sake of the video, I'll be listening to The Fame Monster, Standard Born This Way, Standard ARTPOP, Joanne Deluxe, Standard Chromatica, and the deluxe version of Mayhem. It's not technically a deluxe. It actually looks exactly the same. Same title, same cover. I don't know why she did that. That just seems like poor marketing. But what do I know, dude? I'm just a guy making a YouTube video in my freaking bedroom. So I thought about including Harlequin as well, but it seems like it's just mostly covers of older songs. And like, who wants to listen to old people music? Lame. Shout out to my friend Nick for helping me with all of this research. He's easily the biggest Gaga fan I know, and he's been campaigning for this video for a while. So Nick, if you're watching this, hi. These 6 projects add up to a total of 98 songs, 359 minutes, or 5 hours and 59 minutes of music. So nothing crazy, but still a good chunk of time. Let's see, like 6 hours? I'm pretty sure that's how long a school day was in high school. Maybe 8 to 2? Yeah, something like that. Again, I don't really have any expectations going into this. Obviously, I know the popular songs, Bad Romance, Born This Way, Poker Face, Rolling in the Deep. Was that her? I don't know. So without further ado, let's find out if Gaga's music is actually as good as people say it is, or if it's just some steaming hot dookie, some Lady Gaga, if you will. Please subscribe. Yeah, that's a napkin. Lady Gaga's debut album, The Fame, was released on August 19th, 2008. Hey, that's a day before my birthday. It spawned hits like Just Dance, Poker Face, Paparazzi, and more, thrusting Gaga into the limelight. As an album, The Fame feels like the sound that a lot of people associate with Lady Gaga. Everything from the oddball metaphors in the lyrics to the flashy, bold arrangements. Even the way she pronounces regular words on this album is just very Puriana. And starting out, I was expecting that aesthetic to be the driving force of this project. I thought we'd have some okay songs with okay lyrics, but the production would just be so unique and weird that I would like them anyway. Wrong. 15 tracks, 15 bangers. In fact, my favorite part about this album is that, in spite of having such a polarizing sonic identity, it consistently brings great hooks and melodies that would be just as good if they were sang a cappella. It starts off with Just Dance, which was also Lady Gaga's debut single and her first song to go #1, and it's just a banger, man. That pre-chorus is stuff of legend. And as the album progresses, you start to see her dip her toes into a bunch of different genres, whether that be rock or country or even just regular pop, while not straying too far away from the foundation of an EDM club music kind of structure. And as a result, you get some really interesting blends that I think were probably pretty monumental for that time. I mean, I was 5 when this album came out, so I don't really know. But shoot, 2008, 25, what, 17 years later, it still slaps. Now, The Fame Monster is a deluxe edition of sorts, but I think think the general consensus is that it's a double album. And for a while, I didn't really see much of a distinction between the two projects, but after sitting on them for a while, and I mean like a couple months, I kind of pieced it together in a way that I think makes sense. Maybe you guys could tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. See, the entire project has this theme of obsession and love, particularly in what you would do to get someone and what you would do to get over them. And I mean, most of the times it's just drinking and clubbing and playing with their emotions, but the ways that she's really over the top on this album in regards to literally everything could be seen as symbolic for the heightened lengths that she's willing to go to. Her obsession with this guy is so insane that it's got her going gaga, ooh la la. Oh my god, it's such a banger. But obviously, as we all know, obsession is not love. Some might say obsession isn't a bad thing. Some might say that in order to be the best in your creative field, you can't just be motivated by love, you have to be obsessed. It's one thing to really enjoy something, it's another thing to eat, breathe, and sleep it. That's like me when I'm editing these videos, you know? So I kind of think that it's possible that this guy is just a metaphor as well for like a successful music career, and all the lengths that she's willing to go to get it is just all the things that she's willing to do to become the best, to become one of the pop goats, which ends up creating this fame monster with a corrupted ability to be driven by more natural human emotions like passion or empathy. But back to the distinguishing qualities between the fame and monster. Essentially, I think that the fame showcases this to the listeners, but it's not until Monster that Gaga kind of starts to see it herself. It's very meta and weird, but I think I'm kind of making sense. I'm just gonna keep going. Just for a little like case study, we're gonna look at one song off of each project, AA off of the Fame and Speechless off of the Fame Monster, both of which are bangers, by the way, and touch on technically different topics, but I think the concepts of both of these songs force Gaga to be thrusted into a more emotional context, and how I think she goes about articulating herself on these two different tracks really ties my whole thesis together. AA has a very bright and light feel to it, not exactly the vibe you would expect from a song apologizing for breaking someone's heart.
Cherry, cherry, boom, boom.
Like, what the f, Stefani? Have you no compassion? Have you no soul? And while she's still saying like, yeah, I feel bad, dude, I'm sorry, there's still very clearly a disconnect there. The most articulate that she gets is in the two verses, and even then, each of those thoughts gets interrupted by the AA melody that plagues this entire song. And I kind of see that as a representation of how her music career has taken over her entire life, down to like a micro level. She can't even get through 2 sentences without busting out a catchy hook. There's a specific scene in Tick Tick Boom that this situation really reminds me of, when John and Susan are trying to figure out if she's gonna take that job in another state, and he's been putting off this conversation because he's so obsessed with his musical. When he finally says, of course I don't want you to go, and they hug it out, and she feels like she's finally cutting through to him, he starts tapping on her shoulder a little bit because he thought of like a little melody, and she realizes, oh my goodness, this dude is still thinking about the musical when I thought we were having a heart-to-heart. That's what this song feels like to me. She's really trying to be present and be there with this guy while she's letting him down, but she's so obsessed with her career that she's just unable to be. In contrast of that, Speechless is a very heartfelt Elton John-esque power ballad. From what I could tell, the subject matter of this song seems to be connected to some health issues that her dad was going through at the time, and her being speechless from hearing the news. And since this is a more serious situation, I kind of see it as Gaga being able to snap back to reality. She's so deep in her bag that the chorus goes, I'll never talk again. I'll never love again. Like, that's so sad. How the f did we go from Cherry Cherry Boom Boom to this? I think it's kind of poetic that both of these songs are about not having anything else to say, but one is from not being able to feel emotion, and the other one is from having so many emotions in you that you don't know how to articulate it. Like, damn, either Gaga kind of cooked or I overthink things way too much. It's possible as both. I don't know. I have two kind of half complaints about this album, which I guess would just add up to one regular sized complaint. The first is that a lot of the songs are kind of long. On one hand, those longer run times allows for the production to get deconstructed in really interesting ways, which I appreciate for the most part. On the other hand, sometimes I get like tired of them, and I like on re-listens, I don't really listen to the entire thing. I'll just skip to the next one. The second half problem is that this album does kind of lack a little bit of cohesion. There's a clear theme, there's somewhat of a trajectory if you want to do the mental gymnastics that I did, but I can only imagine that long term it's definitely become one of those projects that's defined by its hits and not really consumed as a singular body of work that often. But it was a completely different time for pop music, so again, that's why I said it's like a half complaint. There probably is a lot more I could say if I really tried to pick apart this album into bits, but the important part to me is that when you strip away the flashy production, all the crazy twists and turns that each song takes, and even take Gaga off of this album entirely, you're still left with a can of earworms. And that's definitely the X factor to this album that I think elevates it to the next level of being one of the greatest pop albums of the 21st century. I don't think that that's an overstatement. Give me a 9, bruh. The Fame Monster is the gift that keeps on giving, and it's probably all downhill from here, but what are you gonna do? Yeah, so I was wrong. Born This Way was released May 23rd, 2011, and it's another heater, bro. Definitely more inconsistent in terms of quality than the Fame Monster, but there's also a few things I think this album does better. Bury the Night started off as kind of a bland album opener, just because it feels really standard for her, and I just wasn't hooked in the same way that Just Dance hooked me in on the last one. But then that outro hits, and oh my goodness. Tell me that's not fire. So I guess it wasn't that bad of an opener. It just started off kind of That moving into Born This Way just gassed me up, bro. I was hooked. And I'm honestly kind of sad I was listening to it in a cafe, because had I been at home or at least in a safer space, I would have been throwing colossal amounts of ass to this entire album. It's just that kind of project, you know? The first few songs early on have that patented Lady Gaga EDM style. When you listen to it, you can imagine like neon lights in a club. I've never been clubbing, but that's what it looks like on TV. And for those first 4 songs, she's in her bag, bro. Sometimes she was being so Puriana that I didn't even know what she was saying. To me, this album is about escaping any societal standards that may have an impression on you and really getting to the core of who you are as an individual. Americano blends Latin-inspired instrumentation with house music rhythms on Sheeb? I don't know how to say it. I don't want to butcher it, even though I just did. She literally sings the whole post-chorus in freaking German, and I'm pretty sure that Lady Gaga is like very Italian, but I think the inclusion of these 2 songs that highlight different cultures that maybe even Gaga isn't very familiar with is meant to further convey this idea of unity in uniqueness. And taking on a concept that widespread could come with a lot of pressure, so a lot of the times you get songs that are really safe and marketable and just generally about coming together. I think the clear difference with Born This Way is that Gaga is out here citing her sources, because she's explicitly saying at the end of Born This Way, it doesn't matter if you're straight, gay, bi, or trans. And she also uses some biblical metaphors and imagery on songs like Judas and Electric Chapel, which is just so bold. To pair those 2 things together on one album, I think it's very cool. Some people are gonna hate that. And honestly, sitting on this album more, I'm more intrigued by that aspect of it, because 2011 was a much different time. If she had released an album like this today, I don't think it would be nearly as monumental. But I think with a song like Born This Way being as popular and as big as it was, just spreads a really positive message. So it's really cool to see. You know, good for you, Gaga. You're doing good stuff. Apparently, she recorded this album in a couple different cities across the world, which I feel like is really cool, because it almost feels like she's getting her hands dirty, you know? Like, it's one thing to sit in your apartment and make a TikTok talking about the things that have gone down in the Democratic Party that have failed people like me and you. It's another thing to get off your ass and make an album about uniting the world while traveling the world. I'm not saying that that was her full intent. I'm sure she was just on tour or something, but I think it adds a cool layer to it. Anyways, that's enough talk about emotions and context and politics and religion and all that BS. Musically, sonic-wise, is this album a heater? I think overall this album is just a little more streamlined than Fame Monster. When you look at it in comparison to that album, it does just feel like a more watered down version of it. However, I do think that this project has a lot more cohesion to it. It started off strictly EDM and kind of sit in that for a couple tracks, but after Americano, you're slowly fed more and more practical sounding instruments and traditional sounds until you get to Electric Chapel and You and I towards the end, which are just like pure rock songs. And then Edge of Glory sends the album out being this sort of amalgam of those 2 styles, with both synths and strings working in harmony, with a freaking saxophone solo. Huh? What? There's a little lull that I feel like it hits before the last few songs, where it just feels less like music and more like auditory environments for you to just kind of chill in. It does give some room to breathe in between the bangers, but personally, I don't need that. Just give me more bang. I don't need breaks. Come on. She definitely stepped up her chops vocally, which is a theme with her entire discography. I feel like every album that we're gonna cover, she just gets better and better, more versatile as a vocalist. And while I think the rigidness of her vocals on the Fame Monster worked well for that project, I do think this album's concept requires a little bit more intimacy, or just more of a personal touch in that area. And the elevated emotion that I feel like Gaga has the chance to give on some of these songs delivers just what I think you need for it to work. Holy this leather jacket is so hot. Why? I'm like sticking to it right now. It's so gross. In spite of all the fun EDM pop that this album has to offer, I'm always just gonna love rock more as a genre. Like, it's just more up my alley. And it really doesn't help that Gaga sounds so freaking good in a grittier rock context. You and I is easily my favorite song off of this album. Probably one of my favorite Gaga songs, period. The vocals are insane. The guitars harmonizing with each other sounds so good. The production in general is just really clean. I don't think it pulls out that well, but in the context climax of the whole project, serving as this emotional climax for the album. Oh my lord, it slaps. It's just life-changing. Every time I listen to it, I just want to like burst into tears. And it's not even that sad. I think my main problems with this project just kind of lie in the intangibles. A lot of the hooks are fun, but just not as great as her last album. In so many ways, The Fame Monster was just like lightning in a bottle. And like I said, it's more streamlined, so a lot of the songs become a little less memorable. The mixing is kind of an issue on this album as well. There's so many moments where I just cannot hear the vocals are too low. And it changes depending on where you're listening to it. Like when I had my AirPods in at the cafe, it didn't sound too bad. Honestly, on my first listen, I thought it was a 10. Now I kind of think it's like an 8.5 in headphones and a 6.5 in the car. Average it out to like a 7.5, I guess. What makes The Fame Monster work so well is the sporadic nature of it, but the ways that this album refines her style down to a more fluid listening experience allows for its thematic value to shine through in a much clearer way. On top of that, I think it's really interesting to see the different ways that artists use their garnered influence to sort of promote any other positive messages. Sometimes it's as small as tweeting about a charitable cause, other times it's as big as pivoting to worship music. For Gaga, I think it's always been clear that her goal was to push this message of being your candid, natural, weird, eccentric, authentic self. And I don't think she would have been able to build her career in the same way that she did if this album didn't serve as such a strong, concise, and genuine mission statement. So yeah, I really liked it. I guess we're 2 for 2.
I'm not a wandering slave, I am a woman of choice.
I know you guys want me to do the makeup. It's not happening. I'm sorry. ARTPOP was released on November 6th, 2013. And did somebody say three-peat? While the album still went #1, it had 1/3 the amount of copies sold as Born This Way, making it her least successful album at the time. Now, it's possible that there's other factors, like people just moving away from buying albums, and I guess listening more on the radio. I don't know. 2013 was before streaming, so I don't really know how music worked back then. I was like 10. Looking at the track list, it definitely didn't spawn the same amount of hits for her. With that said, I personally feel like ARTPOP might be better than both of those albums combined. Probably not combined, but it's pretty good, okay? After Born This Way, it's really possible that Gaga could have streamlined even more to appeal to wider audiences. That's what I think a lot of other artists would probably do in her shoes, but what I love about this project is that she doesn't do that. You know, she doubles down on what made her different, and that choice shined through immediately. The opening track, Aura, starts with what sounds like a ukulele, which if you don't know is basically a ukulele-shaped guitar, paired with these kind of funky robotic vocals, and the way that those two things just perfectly oppose each other, you know, the first two things that you're hearing on the album, honestly represents what I think this album's sonic identity is. While there is a pretty distinct cyberpunky aesthetic, these songs are just not structured in a way that's made for radio. Listening to ARTPOP feels like you're watching a messy, vibrant, abstract painting get made right in front of your eyes. Every new synth track or instrument line kind of clashes with the one before it, and it could be kind of overwhelming at first because, you know, the natural tendency is to hyper fixate on those little changes in the production. But watching as the sounds continue to overlap each other and kind of zooming out, there's something really balanced about it all. I don't know if that makes sense, but it kind of feels like a beautiful chaos type of thing. And I think that's a really important distinction to make because there's a thin line in between chaos as a result of experimentation and it just being a mess. When you have so many different tracks on a single song, so many different sounds that come in and out, you have to be really meticulous about the ways that those sounds are going to play off of each other, how different portions are going to transition into each other, how those transitions are going to be jarring enough that it feels like a shock, but not too jarring that it feels random. And I think this album manages to tread that line quite nicely for about 90% of the time. Because while each of these songs feels so huge in scale, the groove to them always stays intact. At no point do you struggle with timing your frat flicks. But with all this glazing, obviously there's going to be some negatives. I'll admit, I think there's some points in this album where it feels a little bit trapped in an era. Jewels and Drugs is a banger, but something about those horns and like the chantiness to the chorus just feels very 2013. I think there were definitely stylistic aspects to the previous two projects that made them feel outdated, but there being such strong pop melodies just kind of redeemed them. That just isn't really the case here. I also think with everything that this album is doing, you feel a little bit of a disconnect with Gaga. I still think her presence as a vocalist is felt. Like a song like Manicure does not work if she's not as talented as she is, and it's a freaking banger, might I add. But something that I really enjoyed about The Fame Monster is, in a weird way, all the eccentric aspects of the production just kind of felt like oddball extensions of herself and the emotions that she was conveying. And I just feel like her personal touch to those songs was felt a little bit more. I haven't fact-checked this, but I can only imagine that this album was made with a larger team. The main reason I wanted to bring this up is when you get to one of the last songs on the album, Dope, which is basically just a standard piano power ballad, I personally think the song doesn't hit as well as it could because it comes a little bit out of left field. I understand the want to include a song like that, you know, to give the project more depth and emotional variety on paper, but I just think they could have had more of a trajectory leading to that point so it could really serve as an emotional peak rather than just a like little sad one-off. So yeah, overall a great album, maybe just a smidge longer than it has to be, but that's not really a complaint for me. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed it for the entire listen. And you know, every once in a while I come across an album that makes me change the way I listen to music. I think this is one of them ones, because I found myself walking away from this project genuinely appreciating the amount of dedication that went into curating these different textures and sounds on the album. Like creating an album that felt fresh, not because it was saying anything new or had any crazy, flashy, fun hooks, but because sonically it was just unlike anything I'd ever heard before. That's why I really love the title Art Pop, because it feels like that's fully embracing the idea that music production is the sole form of expression on this album. That's not to say that there isn't still any lyrical value here. In a lot of ways, it feels like it's just progressing on the same themes as the Fame, toxic love, toxic fame, and fortune, all that stuff. But at least for me, every creative aspect to this album that I found interesting came from the way it was built. I'm gonna give it a 9. After listening to all her albums and coming back to this one, it really does feel like Gaga in her rawest form. If she were to make all her music with this level of creative freedom and boldness, I could see it getting old kind of quickly. But as a singular concept album in her discography, it works great. It's definitely a highlight. Before we move on, I just want to take a moment to appreciate Applause for the banger-ass outro that it is. Just a perfect last track, summarizing what I think is the end of a specific era for Gaga. Up till this point, I feel like the way that Gaga was perceived by the masses played such a big role in the chip that she had on her shoulder. And obviously every album we've covered so far has addressed that that's become a toxic part of her life. But simplifying that entire arc for her down to just living for the applause feels like a moment of acceptance for the path that she chose. Like, yes, choosing this path was really hard for her. It affected her surrounding relationships. It affected her mental health. It affected her self-esteem. But at the end of the day, she made the choice to go down that path for a reason. Because case in point, she lives for the applause. She was born to be an artist. Pop culture wasn't art, now art's in pop culture and me. That's the bar of the century. Joanne was released October 21st, 2016, and just by looking at the album cover compared to her other projects, you could pretty clearly tell how it's gonna stand out. Gaga's been stripped of all her theatrics, trading in the wigs and crazy makeup and vibrant colors for a soft, muted, minimalist kind of look. And honestly, part of me thinks that she knew there was no way she could out Rihanna art pop, so the natural thought is to set a new status quo, right? This album pairs an indie style with Gaga's natural humongous presence as a vocalist, which gives the whole project a country rock kind of edge. And can I just say, I was so freaking excited for this album, because like I said earlier, I just tend to prefer traditional arrangements with, you know, guitars and live drum kits, all that old people caveman stuff. And it was pretty clear to me that that was the direction this album was gonna go in just by looking at the cover. But with how much I enjoyed the first 3 albums and became more endeared to Gaga as an artist, it really felt like it was all leading to my big Super Bowl moment that would be listening to Joanne for the first time. And you know, I wasn't really blown away. The album starts off with Diamond Heart, which I think is a fun opener, but we see Gaga adapting a bit of a folkier style with the lyrics, and I think it results in kind of a disconnect between the amount of energy that Gaga's bringing to the song and what that folkier style would normally require, if that makes sense. The lyrics to the chorus are young, wild, and American, come on baby, do you have a girlfriend? Very mundane, kind of teenage feeling type stuff, right? But Gaga goes, young, wild, and American! And I personally feel like it creates a kind of awkward blend. As the album progresses, I think she gets better at kind of learning to restrain herself. But the next song is AO, which I thought was a really fun pop country banger until I realized it sounds like the soundtrack to an Old Navy commercial, and now I can't unsee it. The song has been completely tainted for me. I do miss the good old days before my mind was corrupted and I could enjoy this song, but now it's still a banger though, I'm not gonna lie. And as you move through the rest of the album, what started as a pretty concise pitch for a Gaga project devolves into a slew of vague, inconsistent production, awkward lyricism, and bland hooks. Perfect Illusion is a perfect example of this, because it's not like the song itself is unenjoyable, it's just kind of lacking a flair, and that was never like an issue with Gaga, you know? It feels like it follows a structure that usually would work for her, but it's just missing any distinct qualities to help it stand out or to help it tie into this album's aesthetic. And I feel like a concept album album like this, meant to work in contrast to the rest of her discography, really needs to wear its distinct qualities on its sleeve for it to work. That's how you get it to feel singular, and that's how you take full advantage of Gaga's versatility. And some songs do that. Million Reasons and Grigio Girls are some of my favorites for the ways that they fully commit to being this kind of indie country vibe. On these songs, Gaga is just doing something completely different vocally that works really well for the style, while simultaneously being so different than anything she's ever done, and it sounds freaking amazing. When this album does get the blend right of using Gaga's rich emotion that she always has with her vocals in places that in a more intimate setting, it works so well. It's some of her best stuff. And there's a lot of deep tracks that I think do that really well, but unfortunately, sometimes it feels like she's just taking the exact same amount of heightened Puriana energy that she had on Born This Way and just slapping a banjo behind it. She definitely has reached a new peak as a vocalist at this point, and I do appreciate the ways that she does challenge herself on this album. I guess I'm just underwhelmed because I had high expectations for it, and this project didn't really commit to it in the way I would have wanted it to, but I'm trying to pull myself out of that thought process and just regard it for what it is. I think a project like this was going to be hard to pull off regardless. Take Charlie XCX, for example, another big staple in the EDM pop scene. She does not have the vocal chops to make a switch like this, so in a way it feels really distinct for Gaga. She's probably the only artist in the entire industry that could make such a drastic switch like that, but because that is the case, it's like missed potential. I want her to like commit to it more, to really like flex on them, you know? Here's my top 5 songs. I'm feeling a strong 6.5. I think this album really could have been one of her best if she just like locked in a little more, give it a little more of a cohesive sound, you know, subdue the energy a little bit. That would have been fire. Unfortunately, it's just okay. I liked it. It just wasn't great. On the Pinot Grigio Girls, till the blues turn gold. So I did rewatch A Star Is Born while prepping for this video, and honestly, it's not really as good as I remember it being. The acting is great. Gaga and Bradley Cooper definitely have really good chemistry, and they do a lot of really good stuff with the bland dialogue that they were given. There's a lot of fun details that do ground the movie in a nice way, but simultaneously, there's also a lot of details that I think make it so unrealistic. Fun details, Bradley Cooper always asks people to repeat themselves while he's drunk, which really breaks up the flow of some of the scenes and creates like awkward pauses. But I love that it's like a small little thing to show that, you know what I mean? It's one thing to do any crazy effects and low pass moments where kaleidoscope things where you're like, oh, I'm so wasted, oh my god. And it's another thing to just do something like that, which when you're creating a project that touches on such a real issue that so many people resonate with, like alcoholism, this is definitely the right route to go. Not glorifying any aspect of it, but really showing the downsides and how it affects the people around you as well. The unrealistic parts basically came from everything related to the music. For starters, Gaga's music that the label gives her is just so freaking bad. Why did you do that, do that, do that, do that? Oh my god, it's horrible. I know that that's the point, is that the music is bad, but like it does pull you out because like there's no way anyone is gonna think that's a good song. Also, when he talks about writing that big love song at the end, he's like, it just kind of flowed out of me and onto this page. This is a guy that has apparently been writing music for his entire life, and that's how you're gonna articulate it. I think it's just pretty clear that this movie was not made by people that actually really are in the music industry. Not that I should be speaking like I am, but I mean, even if I'm able to point this stuff out, that's how you really know, right? Overall, the movie is fine. You know, I would just say it's like really Oscar baity. You're gonna feel things watching because it's just so freaking sad and so grounded in reality. But just because a movie's sad does not make it good, in my personal opinion. But there are some cool shots. Boom, 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 bam. Man, I love movies. I'll probably give it like a 7 out of 10. Anyways, this is a music channel, so let's just get back to the music, right?
I didn't ask for a free ride.
Chromatica was released on May 29th, 2020, and serves as Gaga's return to EDM pop. I guess Joanne was not a pivot after all, it was just a little side quest. And honestly, I don't have a lot to say about this album because I wasn't that crazy about it. The project starts off with Chromatica 1, which is one of 3 different string interludes on the album, and I feel like the inclusion of these tracks is just so random. Like, it feels like it's trying to build up this project as some huge scale artistic masterpiece, which honestly, I don't really think it is. I personally just kind of see this project as Gaga's contribution to the modern house music craze. So unlike the last album that we talked about, I don't think there's any issue with execution. Like, it's a fine album. It's not like it's bad house music. I just kind of feel like this style doesn't allow for her best qualities to shine through. Production is kind of redundant throughout the entire project, just always having the same frat flick tempo. All of the synths and drums feel really similar to each other. If they don't sound the same texture-wise, they're keeping the exact same groove. And in comparison to her first 3 projects, where it was basically all about the twists and turns, this project was a massive letdown for me. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of cool features, Blackpink, Elton John, Ariana Grande, and none of them really jump out to me. Not even the Ariana Grande one. Do you guys know who I am, bro? Look at my wall. Boom. Do you see this? I'm not playing around. And I kind of feel like Rain on Me is a little bit mid, which is a bummer because it actually won Ariana one of her 2 Grammys that she's ever won. This song, and honestly the entire album, just feels like H&M music to me. Vibrant enough to set a fun tone when you walk in, but also stagnant enough for you to phase out once you actually start shopping, and lots of post-chorus rideouts that would make Zed just so proud. There seems to be this theme of kind of rising from the ashes, healing from your trauma, and finding your zest for life again. And I'll always appreciate a message like that, but I feel like the sound of this album doesn't really play into that concept too well. Yes, the songs are upbeat. Yes, when you pay attention to the lyrics, those thoughts are well articulated, but I feel like if you want to really send that message home, it has to feel more cathartic, and there's nothing about this production that feels personal to me at all. The song Free Woman is lyrically a nice progression from the toxic love themes that we saw in Fame Monster, but because the music is bumping so loud, I'm not really gonna resonate with that. It feels like I'm having a conversation with Lady Gaga at a rave. Like, it's not that I don't care what you're saying, it's just I can't hear you. I've never been to a rave, but that's what they look like on TV. I honestly don't really know what I'm not getting, because a lot of people online seem to really like this album. Fantano gave it a 7, Metacritic reviews glazed this thing to death. I don't know, I don't really like it. To me, it felt hollow. The melodies that Gaga is singing feel easy and redundant. But by all means, to all the Gaga monsters watching this, or whatever her fan base name is, please tell me how I'm wrong in the comments. I welcome that. I will say though, in a world where most pop stars of her generation are creatively and emotionally stunted at the point in which they became famous, I'm glad Gaga's still making a conscious effort to try new things and evolve her sound. I'll give this album a 5. I didn't listen to it thinking it was particularly bad, but it really didn't bring anything out of me. Mayhem was released on March 7th, 2025, riding off the coattails of one of Gaga's most successful singles of her career. Honestly, I think this song is severely overrated. I mean, like, it's okay, they're good at singing, but I don't like the song that much. And it was thrown onto the end of this album. Interesting choice. For reference, this is the picture that I'm trying to replicate. Okay, you get the idea now. I'm gonna take off the sunglasses. I really like this album. In a lot of ways, it feels like a true return to form for her. Everything from the textures of the synths, to the rock electronic pop blend, to her vocal style, even the themes on this album. She's just in her Fame bag. And I'd even say that there's some ways she expands upon that sound, with a shift to more classic sounding electric guitars and bass lines, leaning a little bit more rock and a little bit less electronic pop, but still keeping a solid blend of the two of them going. And that paired with Gaga's more mature vocal tone on this album just really gives it this extra emotional grit. In a weird way, the stakes feel higher, especially after all the growth we went through with Joanne and Chromatica. You really hate to see her backsliding into these tendencies, but you also kind of love to see it because we got so many bangers. The album opens with Disease, and this song, man, there's like a John Bellion-esque pocket to the groove that just feels like a tighter, more modern spin on the Fame shtick. Abracadabra is a hit, great hook, and the drum patterns and overall vibe to this song are kind of similar to Chromatica. I think the difference here is that her presence as a vocalist on this song feels more prominent, and even though you still have the frat flickiness to it, it's a little more reserved. Track 3, Garden of Eden, feels so nostalgic, bro. And at this point, I was starting to get super hyped, because I don't take 3 straight bangers lightly, but I do take it lighter than 4 straight bangers. Oh my god! Through listening to all the albums before this one, I found myself not only growing to love Gaga as an artist, but also whittling down the sounds from her that I do like, and the sounds from her that I don't really like. And I basically spent this entire goddamn video talking about how much I love Gaga in a rock context. So imagine the pure elation I felt when I listened to Perfect Celebrity for the first time, bro. I can't say enough good things about this song. I just really feel like she's come so far as a vocal presence. She's just a master at work. That's really how I feel about this album. This album feels like a master at work. A victory lap of sorts, where she's not really trying to pave a new path for herself, but just reminding everyone that she's still got it. And apparently Joker 2 was pretty bad, so I guess she had something to prove. Some of these songs are some of her best, in my opinion. Just the tightest hooks, passionate vocal deliveries with those crazy electric guitars. I really can't ask for more. And we also have some really great, solid, just like standard pop grooves, like on Shadow of a Man. Holy fuck, bro, Shadow of a Man. And that's all I really have to say, man. It does everything that Fame Monster does well, maybe with less consistently infectious hooks, but consistently more precision in the production and vocal deliveries and the overall instrumentation. There's so many little moments and little things, whether it's a little tiny guitar riff on the post-chorus or a small synth part, that just give this album so much character and make it feel so big in scale while not losing any of its emotional intimacy. It really feels like you're having your cake and eating it too, as far as Gaga projects go, and I think this album cements Gaga as probably the greatest pop artist of the 21st century. Here's my top 5 songs. Give me a solid 9. I love this album so much, and it's easily a catalyst for album of the year for me. I guess I'll have to wait and see. You never know with that new Taylor Swift that's coming out, right? This is Future Jason speaking. I can confirm that the new Taylor Swift album is indeed a non-factor. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I spent way too much time just trying to figure this part of the video out because it's really hard to pin down any specific appeal to Gaga's music when there's just so much that she does right. First, you have the actual music, which she clearly has a heightened dedication for as far as quality output goes. In today's modern pop scene, with double albums and Taylor's versions galore, Gaga's output remains at a much slower pace than some of her contemporaries, but with each project you can guarantee not necessarily perfection, but precision. Precision with how the concept of the album is executed. Precision with how each individual song is structured and the depth to their production. And when it comes to something as subjective as music, that's really all you could ask for, right? I may have had my personal issues with Chromatica and Joanne, but at no point did I ever feel like anything was lazy. But listen, overall, I just think her career is the gold standard for what a good, healthy pop career should look like. You have quality output on a micro and macro level that isn't rushed, clear artistic visions with a consistent effort to challenge herself and evolve her sound, and an insistence to not conform to any ridiculous standards that the industry already had set before she got there. She's a genuine trailblazer in her field, and unlike a lot of the other pop artists to push pop music forward, I think she managed to do so not by being at the right place in the right time, but because of an effort that she made and continues to make to set herself apart. To close this video out, I want to ask you a question. In your opinion, what does it mean to be a pop star? Well, for me, being a big pop star has nothing to do with the quality of your musical output and everything to do with your presence in pop culture. The fact of the matter is, if tomorrow someone came out with an album that does everything Man's Best Friend did but better, it wouldn't matter because that album was not around when the Man's Best Friend cover dropped and everyone berated Sabrina online. So when I say that I think Lady Gaga is the GOAT of modern pop, it's not just because she's got a ton of bangers. It's not just because she has a voice that's been sent down from the heavens to grace all of our ears. It's not just because she wore a stinky room temperature meat dress to the Grammys. It's because, case in point, she is a cultural phenomenon unlike any other. Not in terms of magnitude, but in terms of singularity. 50 years from now, we'll probably have had 10 more Sabrina Carpenters, but just the one Lady Gaga. Album ranking time, this one was pretty hard. We got Chromatica, Joanne, Born This Way. That's pretty self-explanatory. These top three, I'm just gonna try and go off of instinct, so ARTPOP, Fame Monster, Mayhem. Wow. That was crazy. And here's my top 15 songs. I honestly have no idea what this list looks like right now. I'm gonna have to cook it up. I have no idea how I'm gonna make it because she has too many freaking bangers, dude. I keep finding new Gaga heaters every single day. Thanks for watching this video. Comment down below some of your thoughts on the albums we talked about today. Feel free to roast any of the opinions that I had that you disagree with. And leave a like if you enjoyed because it really does help out the channel a lot. This video was fun, man. I really did not expect to become as big of a fan of her music as I did. I mean, literally, this listening process made me realize that she's the GOAT. That's probably like the best case scenario, right? Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. I would be psyched if you left a like. Leave a like, I really want you to leave a like. And hit that subscribe button. Hit subscribe, yeah, please hit subscribe. You know you should, yeah, hit subscribe, please hit subscribe. You know you should.